Hello, and welcome to the dinner table and to the apparent vestiges of the ancient Hunnic Empire. My name is Ebube, and you are listening to Popcorn for Dinner. This is an interesting episode because we finally find out what's for dinner. I'm joined by my good friends, Chinedu and Jerry today, as we try to dissect everything that was said, not only at the various dinner tables of this episode, but in the offices, pathways, and of course, basements, all through the runtime of this beautiful episode of television, Severance Season 2, Episode 6. So, hi kids. What's for dinner?
Hey.
Hi guys. Brilliant intro, by the way. Banky needs
Thank you.
he needs to run for you're giving him a run for his money.
Well, if I've done my job right, he should already know that.
To be fair, this is always weird. I didn't even say the last one we did, that Milch impression caught me off guard because it was spot on.
Thank you very much.
Ebube is clearly the star of the show. So we're just the two midfielders supporting the main man up top, the striker.
I'm so
So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Though I dare say the real star of the show is AG. But before we get into this episode, I should point out that we are covering quite a lot on this podcast now. I promised last time that Winter Wonder was underway, and that is still the case.
Mm-hmm.
We have episodes out on Invincible Season 3, Yellow Jackets as well, and of course, The White Lotus Season 3, which has just started this week. It's practically a bonanza at this point. So there's something for everyone right here on the Popcorn for Dinner feed. So join us and let us know what you think in the comments. Let us know what you think wherever you're listening. Definitely check us out, not just on the audio platforms, but on YouTube, where we have quite a lot of content. So, guys, I don't even know where we should start today. I feel like the best place would be Mark and all his reckless decisions, his potential trauma. Maybe we could start with Milch and the fact that he's trying to correct his mistakes. Or perhaps we should start at dinner. I don't know. Let's go to Mark. How about that? Let's go to Mark. What is Regabi doing at this point? Do we still believe she knows what she's doing?
He's definitely her lab rat. She's still figuring her way out of this reintegration thing. You see her facial expressions, and it's like a mad scientist. Yeah, you see, it's like a mad scientist finally putting together their crazy theories in their basement, and oh my god, like this actually works. Like.
That's so wild, man.
It's like when she had that reaction to him having a flashback to Gemma, she was like, "Oh, you're actually talking to someone now." So
as if she wasn't expecting it. Oh my goodness. Like I think it was so like pensive even at the beginning. When they show us a direct continuation from the previous episode, which is not usually the show's way.
Yeah.
And they tell us, Mark's like, what are they doing to her? And all Regabi says is, all I know is she's essential. And it's like, what does that mean? What does she's essential mean? Did you know from the beginning that she was there?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, like, it took you 2 years to try and reach out to this guy or like reintegrate PD. Like, there's so many questions that I personally have for Regabi, so she should hope I don't catch her. But with all that in mind, I guess while we're on Mark, let's talk about, his glitching. Now, does this glitching bode something, let me say, positive, optimistic, or do we think he could kind of end up along the lines of what PD went through?
I want to say, I think the glitching is part of the process, I'll be honest. But obviously we can see that it's not perfect. Mark is coughing as well. he's having symptoms that are quite scary. And of course, you start to think, is he not taking his meds as well as he should? Or, is Regabi wrong? Like, the post-op instructions are not as flawless as she thinks. Like you said, mad sciences, like, you believe in your methods, but we can see moment to moment that she's thinking on the go. For example, she pauses to herself and says, we have to flood the chip, and goes straight to doing it. He is a lab rat. That doesn't really give me confidence that she has done the flooding the chip before. It's more like, here's something that could work. There's a risk of hemorrhage, and he's like, yeah, fuck off, I'm not doing this. But she's like, we have to. So I think
she's just like, there's a slight risk of hemorrhage, and he's like, yeah, me bleeding to death, just in case we forgot what hemorrhage means.
Oh my goodness.
It's those kinds of things, I think, for me anyway. And again, shout out, one thing I want to do in this episode, and this is probably a good place to do this and not theories, is we have to shout out to a lot of technical things that go on, especially in this episode. I have love for the sound. If everyone knows I love sound music, whether it's the power of silence or in this case, the way they use the background music in each scene. We love that in this episode. But then the visuals, reintegration visuals, the glitching is phenomenal. I love seeing all of them.
The sound design there is pretty great too.
The set design, like making sure the couches are in the right place, everything is perfection. I love it. Like, just shout out to them. And the last part of that as well is whatever research the storytellers are doing into actual neuroscience, so the whole Severance thing sounds believable. It's so good. Like, I'm loving interacting with that. So just throw that in there.
It's good to see that you're watching something where people have paid attention to detail. And that's something I really enjoy about this show. I mean, like you said, the positioning, even of the furniture. Like when this guy saw Miss Huang in his basement, I was like, hey, that's a problem. That's a big problem. But I guess let's switch gears for a second and talk about Dylan. Because right after that introductory scene with Mark and Regabi, we get Dylan reporting what happened to the others, or at least saying as much as he feels he can say without losing his brand new perks, because they still have him in the chokeholds and he hasn't learned anything. So, Chinedu, why do you think Dylan is so interested in protecting his perks now? Do you think this has more to do with seeing Gretchen, or this has more to do with simply his love of perks? Or do you think he's kind of just over the whole Irving thing on some level because now he's distracted?
I think it's a bit of both. Because number one, obviously we've seen Dylan, want to always be the number one refiner for the quarter, to get
the star,
to get the melons, to get the what's that egg thing that they had that he said it's to die for. There's something egg that Helly was like, this is really good. It was in season 1, but anyways, so he loves those and the waffle parties. But then he's also this, person that's discovering love for the first time. You can tell from how he interacts with Gretchen that it's so wholesome. It's like a kid just, having their first crush. But this time the crush actually, likes him back, because this is a version of him she also wants to see as well. So it's just think of it as, maybe a young kid or a young teenager that's in secondary school. You get to see your crush every time. But then to keep seeing your crush, you need to keep things away from your friends. You can still feed them drips and drabs, but, that's well enough to keep them going. But what would you do in that scenario? Would you tell your friends, or would you keep it to yourself for as long as you can? So I think we all know that the teenager in that scenario would keep it to themselves as long as they can, which is what Dylan is doing. Obviously, when time then unfolds, it'll all come to light.
Yeah, and I guess it keeps to my whole analogy last week about how the innies are essentially experiencing an adolescence. So this is very different from how they would have been in season 1. And I guess speaking of drip, for anybody who's watching on YouTube, you'll definitely see that Chinedu is representing Severance's Arsenal connection, because, and that's a whole kind of worms that I can't even get into right now. but yeah, I think it's quite funny that Helly is wondering why everyone is so apprehensive toward taking any action. When she's the only one who feels like there's nothing to hide, right?
Yeah.
But everyone essentially is hiding something. Dylan is hiding his perks. Mark is hiding how he's really feeling. And, that eventually happens when they go to talk in the bathroom stall, because apparently that's the one final place that they're not being surveilled.
Yeah.
Or so they think. I have a feeling there's a camera in there somewhere, because I wouldn't put anything past Lumen.
Yeah.
But she's trying to encourage him and everything. And then he finally drops the bombshell. He mentions that they had sex in the tent. She thinks he's talking about Miss Casey, and he has to correct her, which is, wow, what a gut punch. That is like, I could feel her pain through the screen. Like, that devastation was real. So real that she had to take a walk and sit in the corner. Like, this is some real, like, the teenage boy just broke my heart and now we're not going to prom. Like, the whole adolescence thing is just going through. I mean, how do you guys feel about the way Mark delivered the news? Because I know he was trying to be delicate, but then again, he was also hurting. I feel like he has no real context for this stuff. So it was always bound to just like hit her like a bag of bricks. Maybe.
I think it's hilarious because it still comes back to what we're saying about, them being very young in their experience of anything external from Lumen.
Yeah.
You go back to the bathroom, and then he says we exchange vessels. What a way to tell someone that you have sex with someone else.
No, that was great.
We exchange vessels. That was hilarious. And then, when she eventually kind of makes peace with it, and then she comes to him and he's asking her, do you want me to explain to you what happened? Like, why would I want details on how you had sex?
And she's like, I don't want her memory, which just like, just as you're thinking, bro, relax, don't say anything. She says, I don't want her memory, which then signals us that, oh wait, no, this is actually not a joke. There's actual real trauma. There's true trauma going on here.
Exactly. So it's just funny the way I think it represents everything that we know about, or what we've been talking about in terms of how they're dealing with emotions and anything external to what they've known so far in Lumen.
That is so. I mean, I see that, but I read that so, like, the way I read that was so much darker. And I was even wondering if we should start the segment. Yeah, like, I was wondering if we should start the segment with, like, another, like, trigger warning for the assault thing as well. Because the way I read it was Mark understood or possibly knew. So we talked about how this was kind of an assault from Mark. But one thing we didn't, a lot of people haven't really addressed is it's also the same for Helly R as well. Because it's like waking up and finding out you had sex with someone, but you have no recollection of it.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Interesting point, yes.
And in that scene, it's like Mark is trying to be, I mean, forget the we shared vessels that killed me, but like he's trying to be as delicate as possible, which is why he's saying things like, I'm sorry. Like he's apologizing to her because like she's saying she tricked both of us. And then Helly goes, she's like, I just need to take a walk. Like I said, she literally does the sliding down the wall, everything. The soundtrack, the piano melody is very solemn. We're kind of, in that moment, I felt broken for her. And then even when she comes back to essentially reclaim her story, it's like, is this the thing where someone responds by claiming their sexuality back in a not so healthy way? But maybe this is healthy for them. I have no idea. But the way I read that was purely from the perspective of her realizing that she's just been violated in a way that she never possibly could have been expected.
And it goes back to, I think it's an excellent point, because it goes back to a lot of what the show asks about body autonomy, well, in the context of the show as well. Because you have this power struggle between Helly and Helena. We've had the power struggle right from time, from the start of season 1 till now. Her literally denying her consciousness or her existence until now. We have this it's come to the height of it, essentially, because this is the height of the violation that you could possibly have taken away from me, or you could have given me, rather. So I think it's an excellent point, Jerry.
Yeah, it's clear she's trying to get back what was taken from her, right down to the fact that where she eventually leads him to when she says she doesn't want her memory, that she wants her own, is what she sees as a makeshift tent. Like she literally says, "Ta-da, a tent."
That was one of my favorite lines of the entire episode.
It was really cute.
I loved it because
exactly.
It was like, that's the Helly I know. Because remember when we talked about in episode 2, we were like, it felt like Helena wasn't making the same jokes Helly would. I was like, that's Helly. Ta-da, a tent. It's like, yep, that inappropriate humor. I know my goats.
Yeah, she wasn't making the same jokes. And as Chinedu even said around that time, it's like she was in the background.
Yeah.
Like Helly would try to lead conversations, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. And, this whole vibe between them in the hallways, it also, another thing that harkens back to, the innies having this adolescence of sorts. The way they're portrayed in their search for that place is like they're looking for a private place, like they're kind of just trying to be together, and then when they come back, they're just like so giggly and smiley, right? It's like they have something now, and they feel like they've been able to kind of take back a good chunk of what was taken from them. And of course, this is preceded by this very interesting intimacy montage with like, the memories Helly is currently reliving. It shows that she loves Mark despite what was taken from her, and like she's trying to really maximize that. And that is now, juxtaposed with everything that Dylan is doing, because, Dylan is having his meeting, I guess, with Gretchen again. And, he started to see his outie as not so much of a screw up, perhaps due to like this transitive affection. It's like he likes Gretchen and Gretchen likes his outie. So his outie must be cool on some level, right? And I guess this is another chance for me to, I was right yet again. Okay.
Yeah, to be fair, so in our predictions last week, you did say we'll see Dylan and Gretchen again. Yeah. When I was watching that, I remembered what you said. I remember what you said.
I just had a feeling. It's like there's this theme. Like when Milch said that Kubel was trying to have a throuple with Mark in episode 1. It's almost like everywhere. It was foreshadowing, because honestly, the low-key throuples all over the place in this episode. But we'll get to that in a sec, I guess. How do we feel about what Dylan is up to?
Okay, then I might as well just throw this in there now. I wanted to say, for one, I like these Dylan and Gretchen moments because they're just so endearing. They're so sweet. I like Dylan learning about his life, and Gretchen has this on like in other shows. This actress, this voice thing can be creepy, but this time I'm happy with it. Like. It's so beautiful watching them together, and every time I see these like visits that will probably become conjugal visits at some point, hopefully not, I'm always writing in my notes that I really like these things for Dylan. I don't want to see them taken away because it's some good in his life.
Yeah, clearly he doesn't either, which is why he's acting kind of foolish.
Well, but like I understand why, and then the other thing I picked up here as well is, again, we have other clues of like innies and outies having like similar interests. I think there was something before, I can't remember what it was. I think it was even Dylan just mentioning his own interest in scuba diving.
He asked what their first date was. She said, is it scuba diving? No, he said, is it scuba diving? She said, no, it was Thai food. And then he said, but you did go scuba diving too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just little things like that bleeding in. Like, I like those kinds of interactions coming out.
Yeah, he had all these phases, and he's learning about them, learning about her, simultaneously learning about himself, woodworking, garage beer making. But you can't fault a guy for at least trying things,
Yeah, 100%.
I also find it interesting how in an episode where like Milch is trying to not use big words anymore, Dylan is out here only knowing how to use offspring as a word rather than kids or children, and Mark is again out here saying sharing vessels. So
thinking of my offspring,
it's just
and looking
interesting
at your
how
face.
like their rhetoric is not like, the show is timeless in this way. It's like we just don't know when anything is happening. Everybody's talking weird, which is just hilarious.
You mentioned this already, like the show is asking a question, and I think you guys might have mentioned this in episode 5 when Drummond had said something about you have to remind these innies who they are. The show keeps asking that question about who the innies are, and this scene for Dylan is probably one of the first conflicts between his innie and his outie, and it echoes something that Adam Scott was saying at the start of the season, which is that this season a lot of the innies and outies are going to have to come to the terms with the fact that they have different goals, and their goals might not necessarily align. Like there isn't really room for both Mark S and Mark Scout to have their goals achieved. Same way Dylan is seeing something here. He likes Gretchen, and there's now the conflict that is being introduced into outie Dylan's marriage with Gretchen through this scene and the other scene after.
Yeah, I feel you. To be honest, I think these goals are something that they will have to reconcile, especially if we're going to keep exploring this idea of reintegration.
Yeah.
I know some fans have been worried about reintegration as essentially the death of the innie, but I don't necessarily see it that way. I think it's kind of this unhealthy joining, whereas the innie gets the outie's memories and the outie gets the innie's memories. I'll probably talk about that in a little bit when we get to, diving into the actual dinner that happens.
Yeah.
But I want us to talk about Milch for a second, because after, those initial scenes in the episode with Mark and Regabi and, Innie Mark and the other innies in the kitchenette, Milch confronts Miss Huang following his performance review, because she is obviously the anonymous tip that got him in trouble. And I think it's interesting because some people were theorizing that Miss Huang might be severed, and now we know for a fact that she is not. In episode 5, she said that he shouldn't let them have a funeral because it makes them feel like people, which is the kind of callous thing that Helena Egan would say. So now we're trying to see Miss Huang in this, I don't know, expressive way. It's like she's going almost mask off with who she actually is. It's like this kid has attitude, essentially. Like, she's a lot more expressive with him. She literally seems like more of an adult, honestly, when she talks to him. She shows concern. Whether it's fake or not is a completely different question altogether. But it's like her fake smile drops. And honestly, smiles are used a lot in this show to control people. Milchik is the master of this. And Natalie is his teacher, right? They essentially use smiles to disarm people all the time. And as Milchik is talking to Miss Huang in this quote-unquote confrontation scene, he's trying to remind her who's boss. He's like, you cannot graduate from this fellowship till I deem you Wintertide material, which I'm sure we'll find out a little bit more about what that means later on. But I guess that's starting to answer our questions as to why there's a child working here. She's in the fellowship.
Yeah.
But is that still allowed? Are we okay with that answer?
And why is this
is that enough for us?
Why is this child still there? She does everything. We'll get to that too. But this child is not just an admin. She's doing the health stuff as well. My God.
I think that's
literally, she's administering first aid. She's managing the office.
I think that's generally the duties that a lot of them do. Like latterly, she's in the oppressor, outside to the external world. She's also, going to pitch to Rickon why his book should be, the official book of Lumen. But just to take it back to Miss Huang and Mr. Milchik, I think I want to go into Mr. Milchik in depth a bit. But Miss Huang, who's played by Sarah Buck, the acting is amazing.
Phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Yep.
It is amazing. I mean,
she's so good.
Her mannerisms, everything is perfect. She
makes
she
was only 15 when
so
they filmed
creepy.
this.
Really?
Yeah, she's 18 now, and I believe they filmed season 2 2 to 3 years ago.
Yeah, honestly, all the plaudits. But to go to Mr. Milchik, I think for me, my own personal opinion of him, I've struggled to to make my stance on him. Because last season, he wasn't a villain, but he was definitely this person that was horrible.
An antagonistic presence, let's call him that.
Yes, exactly. And he embodied everything about the horrible nature of capitalism, the horrible nature of corporations. And this season...
Oh, we're going deep. Okay.
This season, I think he's we've obviously started to see the humanization of him, but then I'm also struggling with who is this guy actually. But I think what I've come to realize, and Severance does tell us this about a lot of the characters, is they can be many things at once, you know? And
very much so.
Yeah, Mr. Milchick, I think he is this guy that he's a religious fanatic. He doesn't, believe in whatever it is that Lumen is doing so far from what we've seen, I believe. But then at the same time, he's also...
Yeah, like he's subscribed.
Yeah, exactly. He's subscribed to the identity because he's also this person that also believes in, punishment for if you do wrong and he's like a military person. He believes in everything like
approbation, retribution, all that stuff.
Because why I bring it up is one thing I've struggled with is I remember him making Helly R read that apology 1,000 times. I can't remember the count. And it
was around that. Yeah, imagine that. That's crazy.
Honestly. And then you think of this person that says, I'm not Harmony Cobell, but then he does that. But then you also see that he even punishes himself with his performance review. He makes those paper clips or puts them together until his hands are shaking. He goes in front of the mirror.
The trembling was wild.
It's crazy. He did that to himself. He put 2 stacks of paper and clipped it. I can't imagine how long that took him. So yeah, I think, it's just a bit of a, outpour, but yeah, it just makes sense.
No, it's right on brand. It's right on topic.
To add to that, I think there was a very interesting thing pulling out, because I always wanted to question. So we know how the propaganda gets to the innies, but the people who aren't severed, who work on the floor, now we've gotten a glimpse with the performance reviews and the standards that they sort of hold themselves to. And we start to understand why, for example, Miss Cobell, who we also say might not necessarily be a villain, we don't know yet, but we see how she is in season 1. We're seeing Milchick, who was in conflict with her for a large part of season 1. We're seeing him in her position now, and we're seeing him have those conflicts with Miss Huang. But now we're taking the veil a little out and seeing the performance review, and then all of a sudden we now see what Milchick is going to do to reach that review, which leads to I think I'll settle on this being my second favorite scene, because I wasn't sure between this and one of the other dinner scenes. But when Milchick is in the mirror going from "you must eradicate from your essence childish folly" all the way to "grow up," and then "grow," and then a very intense, angry grow. And I'm thinking, what is this cold chick Bell monster we've created, where all of a sudden he sounds like he's no longer using the big words. He sounds like how Cobell would address the image. He's just like, grow. Like, that's very Cobell. And then you start to think,
so is he simply practicing his speech, or is he kind of addressing himself? Like, is he
I think it's both.
becoming something else, or is he talking to himself?
I think he's doing that to himself, but he's also preparing how he would address the innies going forward, and he will probably act a bit more, because he did say, I am not Harmony Cobell, but now he's going to be more like
So you think his arc essentially is at least partly to become Harmony Cobell?
I think his arc is where he has been put, you guys talked about how he's been thrown into this position where they're blaming him for everything that's gone wrong. And that is obviously oppressive to him. But instead of like the victim fighting back, the victim goes to find their next victim and becomes the oppressor there, in which case he's like very aggressive with Mark. He's going to be more militant with the innies going forward. He's even turning on Miss Huang as well. Like that, shit it's so funny. My manager was saying this to me last week in a one-to-one, that some managers are really good, like with shit umbrellas. The shit that comes from the top, they just hold an umbrella and you never have to worry about it. And some others, like they just stand there and let it fall on everybody else. And it seems like right now anyway, Milchick seems to be like, right, I'm gonna like create a pipe and make sure you feel the pressure I feel too. But maybe his arc will also be him.
Quite a visual, Jerry.
Yeah, I know, right? But like, yeah, I don't want to go into theories or whatever, but I think his arc just right now is seeing him potentially be that person that takes the trauma and regurgitates it to someone else as opposed to fighting back.
Let's actually just take in the fact as well that mirror and lamp were not just already there, but fully set up. Like, how many times has he had to do this before? That's amazing to me. I just had to see, and obviously props to him for arriving at the correct answer, I guess. Like you saying on some level, he could actually connect more if he did not use as many big words. So I think getting to "you must grow up" was okay. I mean, I thought that was fine, but then he's like, grow up, grow up, grow up, which was a bit unnerving, and I do have to actually shout out that zoom that happens when he's talking to his mirror image, specifically like the fact that the camera is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
In a mirror, like immersive cinematography like that is what deserves awards. I'm just going to put that out there right now. And I hope whoever is voting for the Emmys can hear me. I just want you to hear me. So
I watched no, sorry. I was gonna say I watched this episode with Banky, actually, and he said that there was a body double. So the body double is essentially mirroring every movement that Milch is making.
Yeah.
But to follow up on your points, that honestly, the camera work in this episode was excellent. I was watching some scenes and there's 7-8 angles from some of the dialogues. And it doesn't feel out of place at all. You're following it so well. It feels...
It's so good.
Unless you're, hyper focusing on how the cameras are changing, you wouldn't even notice anything. It's perfect.
It's just amazing to see because, like, in this case, they used like a body double. But I've seen situations where, there will actually be a mirror in the room, but they find ways to hide the camera due to angles or due to different kinds of glass or even due to screens. Like, it's interesting to see, like, there's this one show on Netflix called Criminal, and the UK version of that is like a very, very, very nice iteration of kind of filming mirrors without cameras showing. And the way they did it here, like, it's so clear because you can really focus on Tremel Tillman's face as Milch. Like, you can really just see what he's going through. You can see that emotional journey from "you must eradicate from your essence childish folly" right up until the end. And, speaking of childish folly, he clearly wanted to put Miss Huang in her place. She gets up, she's like, "Okay, yeah, today's my day." And he's like, "You may sit at your regular desk. Like, don't come near my office." Right? Do you guys think she hates him?
100%.
Really?
I think she's experiencing
like she's just waiting for his downfall.
I don't think it's a him
but I think
thing,
whatever Milchik was experiencing.
I don't think she thinks she's competent at his job. And I think she wants a lot more. I don't know what exactly she wants. And, we don't know who she is, but she definitely wants more. She doesn't think he's competent at his job.
And that's just where I'm coming. I think she's experiencing whatever Milchik was experiencing in season 1 with Cobell, where you're seeing the decision this person is making and you're thinking, what the fuck are you doing? Like, the same way he's like, why are you sending them both to the test and to the wellness right now? It's the same way she's like, why are you giving them a funeral? Like, it's just both, like, whatever. Yeah, that's I don't think she hates him. She's just like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think anyone that makes the decision he's making, she would have the same reactions to him.
That's fair. Okay, so how do we think she handled Mark's post-orgasm nosebleed because he's glitching?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. This is why I said, like, it's just amazing that this child seems to have, she wears all hats. She might have to be Inspector Gadget at this point. But yeah, it makes sense. They must have ingrained every possible thing in the manual into her brain. Like, she knows what to do in this scenario. She knows to ask questions like, are you having any auras or hallucinations, which we'll come to later as well. Because again, whatever they're doing studying,
he's like, I don't know what that is. Like, you guys didn't teach him what a deviated septum is.
Right? Like, all of this, it's just, I think she's a very smart persona, or a very smart person, and I like that we're starting to see, like you said, we're seeing that she has attitude. I like that we're starting to see more of her. It's no longer just this, because of when I was born, like, aloof, mysterious character. We're getting a bit more into her, and I like that.
I mean, the fact that she could do all that is impressive. I think what's also impressive is, I guess, the fact that Mark kind of likes Helly again. Like, he seems comfortable. They don't seem to care about cameras. And Regabi as well is kind of getting into the meat of things because Audi Mark is getting closer and closer to learning what happens inside the company. But, Regabi is asking him things that he's not quite reached. It's like, do you remember a black hallway? And I'm just there watching her like, sis, calm down. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand how she's so shocked that this is overwhelming and terrifying for him. Because of course it is. And then, obviously he leaves, right? Which is to be expected. He leaves, he goes to... Well, he goes to the Chinese restaurant, I guess, because apparently that's where everyone goes when they're extremely hungry. That's just the thing universally. And this dude is hungry. I was like, bro, just ask them for a fork. It's okay. Like, he's right there. He's struggling with the chopsticks and he's using his fingers too. And it's like, I know you want to eat, so just eat, right? But obviously there he sees Helly. And he immediately feels like he recognizes her from somewhere. Right. He probably started panicking when she started walking over to him. And that intro she gave of herself, she's extremely dubious for that. Because, wow. Like, she clearly went to the lying academy. Like, she can lie.
For days.
She can really lie. Like she can actually genuinely lie.
I mean, she posed as another person for a few days. She is very much happy to say whatever it is.
Deceive?
Yeah. I mean, just like any other CEO in today's world.
I'm like the head of the company.
Yeah.
Rubbish.
Can I just say, for one, this was the other scene I was talking about that is my favorite scene of the episode. I'll get into why in a sec, but I might get stoned for the next few words we're about to utter, and it's just, is it just me or like Mark Scout and Helena Egan have so much chemistry?
They do have like, chemistry. I don't think you should.
The flirtation was crazy.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get stoned for that. Very obvious.
I would watch that. I would watch that movie. It's very How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like, she's coming in with her cheap, like...
now you might get stoned.
Yeah. No, I don't know about watching. I don't know about watching that.
Hear me out. She comes into the restaurants, like, it's given, like for one, again, the background music, I'm not going to try and recreate it right here. We can, I don't know, but whatever. That got me, because, like, all of a sudden the tone of the series just changes again, where it's given like espionage, rom-com, sexy thriller. Like, this guy, she comes in, does like the hair flick, gives him a look. He's like confused, like, wait, me? And then she's coming closer. He's, like you said, scared. She sits down. She has her ulterior motive. Eventually he's going to bring up his ulterior, because ultimately this is someone he's trying to investigate anyway. They both have their motives, but they're flirting. It's very Mr. and Mrs. Smith or How to Get... Like, I would watch this show just separately. I'll put it out there that I loved this scene for the fact that, like, they had so much chemistry. The music just took us to a whole different world in terms of where Severance usually is. And I liked them up until, like I said, she's lying her ass off. But this is something you guys can probably help me with, but I can't understand the decision she makes when the music changes and becomes more tense and we're back to Severance.
She asks about his wife.
Exactly. Why did she get the name wrong? I still, like,
this is what I've always said. Like, anybody can quote me. I've clearly been saying this since I was like 5 years old. If you're going to steal someone's husband, at least get the name right. Like, that's all I'm going to say.
I assume she did that on purpose. But if she did 100%. That on purpose, I cannot for the life of me figure out the plan of doing that. Like, are you trying to unsettle him, make an enemy of him? Like, it threw me off, like, away from whatever I was enjoying between their
She may have been trying to distance herself, like, make it seem like
she doesn't know
essentially much. Your wife, right? It's like, I know this as the head of the company, but I'm not intimately like connected to the details of your affairs.
Because then you're gonna be like, what does the CEO
she very much is
my wife's name?
Fair enough.
And him joking like, oh, want to take me home to dad already, when he's slept with her twice and doesn't realize it. The irony is too ironic. God. But like, let's be real here.
I mean, to go back to Jerry's points, obviously the first one about them having chemistry, I 100% agree. And I don't think it comes from nowhere. From her part, obviously, it's because because of what she did, on the 7th floor, and she obviously had sex with him. But from his part, it shows that to me, I think reintegration is beginning to happen, and he probably can't explain why there's this attraction to this person.
Yeah.
And it's just natural for him to feel that gravitation. So I think that's just what's happening on their whatever it is it a quadruple now at this point?
You're right. There's 4 of them. Oh my god. Oh wow, that's so wild. Oh my god. Okay. You know what? Speaking of 4 people involved with each other, I guess in this case it's still 3. Let's go over to the George household. Now, Dylan apparently does not know that his marriage is on thin ice. He's out here talking about buying a new car for vibes. Now, any married person that's watching this is probably like, this guy is like, he's heading for a very, very dark corner, right? And her saying that they canceled the meeting just proves me right yet again. Because, come on, like, she's clearly dissatisfied. Maz doesn't know how to feed his children, which is just funny on some level. Like, it's funny and then you realize it's sad. So,
I always
like, what are we doing here?
I always feel sorry for guys that are losing their babes and they don't know it. So, you poor thing. You poor thing.
Why are you saying it like it's something you've witnessed so many times? What are you talking about?
Do you get? He's like, literally, does he know? Well, I think one thing to point out here
to himself.
I mean,
that's insane, man.
That's the worst.
You have some serious existential crisis to have there. Like, who am I? Do I even have Riz? Like, I lost my wife too.
She likes the better version of me.
If there's any throuple that's insane, it's this one. I'm so sorry, but it's this one. Because come on, bro. Come on. No, like, he's out here like
in a sense, it's like she likes you. She's just like this version of you that is like beaten down by life. Maybe not so much, but you know when people are like, oh, she likes the idea of him, she sees his potential. We're literally seeing that physically manifest because she's seeing this put together version that seems to be good at his job, and all of a sudden she likes that version. But the other thing I wanted to point out is just something you said earlier in the episode where Milch and Natalie can control people with their smiles. Gretchen does the same thing here with the car thing. He's like, She's smiling at him. He's like,
she doesn't even answer him.
Like, just test drive only. And she's like, yeah, thank you.
Jedi mind trick. I mean,
she's thinking about that
so crazy to me.
Scene, guys. That's what she's thinking about.
Yeah, because she's essentially falling in love with a version of him that isn't jaded enough to neglect affection for her.
Yeah.
So it's definite that she will keep coming back, and I wonder where that's going to lead. I wonder if he will end up finding out. I mean, if Milchik really wants to be messy, he can send footage of that room, because there's definitely footage of that room.
Absolutely.
To Outie Dylan, and I know he can do it.
Lumen,
he just never goes in.
They
make
mistakes, but they don't make mistakes twice.
No, I'm saying that he would do it on purpose just to cause issues.
Oh, no. I'm saying...
that way he doesn't have to give him the perk anymore.
I'm saying that there are definitely cameras there, basically. Like, they wouldn't make that...
Exactly.
They wouldn't make a mistake of not putting cameras in there.
Because there's so much surveillance. Like, they can go wherever they want. I mean, we see in this episode that Drummond is entering Irving's house. Because, of course, he has a key. Like, Cobell had a key to Mark's house. Everybody who's living in Lumen housing, they have a key to your house. I just want you, they should just know. Like, if you don't know that already, you know that now.
They provide the houses for them, right?
On some level, like, Irving's place doesn't necessarily look like Lumen housing, but it might be on some level. Because, like, Drummond literally pulls out, like, a giant key ring, like this is Looney Tunes. And he just starts opening the door. Like, what's going on? He just enters the house, like, he breaks in. And then we see him looking through all this stuff. He finds Irving's surveillance. He's looking through, like, the place where he hides them, which is that whole chest where he keeps the military memorabilia. You know, he finds out that, you know, he's at Bert's. So now I'm wondering, like, could he put out a hit? Could Lumen kill/disappear Outie Irving because now he's doing too much?
So I have a question on that, but that goes into Theory Central. Just remind me on that one, like whenever we're doing that, just remind me to come back to that. I should point out to everybody
listening/watching that because this is the first episode of the second half of season 2, we're going to get a little bit more into the theories and where things are going to end up. So we are starting a theory section in our Severance coverage called The Fifth Appendix. Milch revealed it to me, and I've really have felt that there's so many things we can learn, not just from the mind of Kier Egan, but from the minds of Jerry and Chinedu, and even AJ. I'm just here to watch at this point. So,
but back to
more on that later. But for now, you can let us know the little preview that you have for what you have cooking for that.
The question I'm asking is just: do you think, because you said Drummond finds out that he's at Bert's, do you think Drummond found out, or do you think it was arranged for Drummond to be there while he's at dinner at Bert's? Because I'm just going to put it out there that I don't trust Bert anymore.
Okay. We are getting into some interesting stuff there.
Yeah. And then on the surveillance thing, they're definitely surveilling because at least whether they're recording, we don't know, but we know that Miss Huang watches them while they have the visits, because remember the very first one, she's like, please refrain from revealing any privileged information.
Children shouldn't be watching that kind of content. But that's just me. Yeah, I'm just a guy. I don't know. Maybe my opinion doesn't count.
Oh my goodness.
I'm just saying. But
this
you
was
know
a
what?
Funny episode.
Let's talk about Bert actually.
Yeah.
Because I think I too believe that Bert has comma. So first of all, Irving combing his mustache and removing the price tag from the wine before entering is crazy, because you shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. Don't be glamming up. You should not be here. Now, Bert is clearly a problem because he plays too much. That's just something I've been thinking since episode 5. The man plays too much.
He's a comedian.
Like, why is there an exposed brick wall in their house as well? Like, the whole thing is so whimsical. Like, and honestly, production design this episode, fantastic.
Yeah,
you guys are on point.
That was class.
You two deserve an Emmy. Now, the actual dinner, right? I find it interesting that when they drop us into their conversation, they're talking about the Whole Man Collective. Now, it's like the writers are trying to make sure we don't forget they exist. So I guess we should be on the lookout for the Whole Man Collective becoming relevant again later.
Another theory.
So here, Irving finds himself, at the table of Emperor Shaddam Corino IV, wondering how the heck he even agreed to this. And only like 6 people are going to get that reference. But he's giving into his intrigue, essentially. You know what? No, I'm going to explain the reference.
It's the Attila thing, isn't it?
It's not the Attila thing.
Oh, I'm dead.
Christopher Walken plays Shaddam Corino IV in Dune Part 2.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
He's the emperor. Now, back to Severance.
Yeah,
Shaddam apparently was led to Lumen by Jesus. Now, I don't know how to feel about this, because that line delivery was absolutely insane, because he says it with all seriousness. Like, he's messing with you, but he says it with all seriousness. What do you guys think of this origin story for Bert and Phil's relationship?
Jerry, do you want to go first?
I can try, but multiple things throughout here. The first one, like the obvious one, is this show keeps asking the questions of who is the any? Is the any a separate person? Like we've talked about the struggle for autonomy that Helly and Helena keep having. Dylan and Dylan G having this battle for Gretchen, I guess. And then Bert is here talking.
That Audi Dylan doesn't even know is happening. He's cooked. He's so cooked. But go on.
And then Bert is here telling us about how the pastor believes that innies are complete people with their own souls, which in a sense, it kind of makes sense. Like, you're splitting the persona and creating, you're splitting the mind and creating a new persona. Does that mean, I don't know about having a different soul, but if it's a different persona, then it's a different person, essentially.
I mean, like, a new persona and a new person would have a new soul, no?
I don't know,
guys. Delving into some very deep stuff.
Exactly, that's what I mean. But like, the point is, this, like, that story, for the first thing that came to my mind, the significance of that. Like, I was looking at it, like, the show keeps asking that question. The second thing was, before I started to not really trust Bert, I was reading it like, okay, I I don't know why. Like, I could see how I would believe that. They seem to be a very religious family, Fields and Bert. He comes in, he's like, "Oh, how did you get entrapped with this Philistine?" Like, they even when he said, "Oh, we're not zealots, I promise."
Good call out.
Their lives revolve around, like, even the verbiage they're using, it revolves around that whole Christian upbringing. They mentioned the Lutheran and all of that. So, like, I kind of believe that to a certain extent until later on in the scene we get like a glimpse of something that makes me think, right, you were bullshitting, that's not true. It might be why you decided to get severed, but I don't fully believe that story anymore. But those were the three things, like the three periods I went through when listening to that story.
I mean, these guys finish each other's thoughts.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, Chinedu, what do you think?
I think that there's a lot of things that you take into consideration when you listen to that story. When you hear Irving catch Bert off guard, by saying Severance only came in, this many years ago. So how were you working at Lumen 20 years ago? So then,
and it's Fields that it makes that error, so to speak.
Right?
So it's
Fields
like,
makes that error, and then Bert then says, "Do you want to put down the wine?" Basically, so
which Bert,
it tells us that there's something here at play. Again, I said I watched this with Banky, so we were discussing, and he said, are we not, is the show telling us that Bert's possibly maybe part of the board, or he wasn't severed the entire time? Anyways, we know that his age is quite close to Helena's dad's age, so I don't believe that story one bit. That's what
I'm just gonna say, what you just said is absolutely sinister. I kind of love it. But it is absolutely sinister because, and my saying these guys, Fields and Bert finishing each other's thoughts, it just shows you how long they've been
together
in this relationship, right? So Fields saying something like that, at first it's like, oh, you're just like, the calculations are wrong. You're just saying nonsense because you're drunk. But I too was getting the feeling later on, this guy may be correct. Like, this guy may be saying something that Bert wants to keep hidden, right?
Exactly.
Even the delivery of, the whole Severance thing, the goal was for Bert's innie to go to heaven with me. And then the camera immediately shows Bert looking at Irving, right? Because it's like that innie is not going to heaven with Fields. At least he might not be, given the case, right? So the show does a lot to remind us that the innies and outies are two sides of the same person.
Yeah.
But it also keeps us aware of the fact that people who are actually severed don't see it that way, right? The separation is essentially everything to them. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen that, because that separation, is shown in this scene, even because the scene builds on the idea of this by implying that severing one's mind causes a person to possess two separate souls, right? And I guess we've kind of discussed this idea on some level, because can somebody have two different souls? Who's to say? I mean, in the world of this show, maybe, but how do we know? And this is part of why I think the whole Mind Collective might end up becoming somewhat relevant in due time. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
that is actually so true. And then there is
No, I was gonna say, I think it's a very interesting thing that the show does, because a lot of people have differing opinions, both in the show as in the characters and us the viewers, on what the takes that we have on them being completely separate people, because we even have different takes on what happens on reintegration, because if you believe a certain thing, then obviously it leads you to believe a certain thing as well if reintegration happens. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you believe that they're two completely separate people, then you will believe that reintegration is quite problematic, to an extent, I believe. So but just to go back to that, I know we just to go back to the dinner, I know we joked about Bert being playful, but I think this scene was very much both of them investigating each other. So Irving investigating Bert, and I think Fields was playing along. into the investigation, and vice versa. So yeah,
Fields is playing along in the investigation of Bert that Irving is doing, or you mean the investigation of Irving that Bert is doing?
The investigation of Irving that Bert is doing. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or whether Fields even knows he's playing along or not, but like, yeah, because I feel like Fields also has his own investigation here where he wants to find out just how much of a throuple this actually is.
But bro, Fields is in pain. Like, how can Irving say the corn is very special, and then Fields' immediate response is, "Do you think you two ever made love at work?" Like, the man is in pain. I just tell you now,
you were supposed to go with me. You were supposed to go with me, and you're here frolicking and finding love on the inside with someone else and having unprotected sex.
No,
especially because that's when I even realized there are no condoms on the 7th floor.
I mean, why would there be? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like it's
everything is unsanctioned. Like, they're not supposed to even know that they can have such relationships, which I guess never occurred to anyone for whatever reason. Fact is, Irving should have left that dinner table like 20 minutes ago, and Fields probably should have stopped drinking.
This is probably a good place to say, sorry, just on that, it's probably a good place to read some of my favorite Bert lines throughout these episodes, because Irving had many opportunities, but Bert is hilarious. Even from "I know where you live," the last time I was dying, but it's when he said, when he finished the story and he's like, he's looking for the exit. That killed me.
He is looking for the exit.
Welcome back to our home. There was something there. 1 second. Even though we're not zealous, so that was Fields. But Bert says, "Welcome back to our home." Even when he opens the door, he's like, "Who the hell are you?" Like, he's so playful. Like, I love this different side to Bert. There's not just this old man.
I'm telling you, the man is a problem. He plays too much.
Yeah. Yeah, but like that, yeah, it's just those lines. Who the hell are you? He's looking for the exit and things like that. Like, when Fields says, "What's mine is yours," I thought that this whole dinner was about to be an introduction to a throuple, but like, obviously, I'm now looking at it more. And even when they were leaving, there's still like this kind of like, "What do you think about Fields?" And it's like, yeah, but either way, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why are there throuples everywhere?
The show is so excellently written, though. I mean, come on, the story ties perfectly into this, and they show us like 3-4 different couples. This is
3-4 different throuples.
This is a masterpiece, guys. I mean, they're not here to play.
They're not playing games. The only person playing games here is Bert.
We're watching something incredible. I'm telling you, like, how do they even, come up with writing everything to perfectly land in this place where they tie in some of them are quadruples. I know we're joking about it, and they tie in all of them together perfectly.
No, but it's true.
In this episode.
And they give you all the information you need when you need it. It's not a moment sooner.
And it's not out of place with the plot. This is crazy, guys. I'm telling you, this is crazy.
Even this reference, like the reference of the title, like, I feel like, am I the only one who appreciates this? Like, because they're calling each other Attila, and they got it from Hun, and that's just amazing. It's just like,
apparently that means
never
father.
expected to be hearing about Attila. What do you say?
Apparently that means father.
I mean, kind of, yeah, but like the fact that I'm hearing about Attila the Hun in this, like in this show, is that just wasn't on my bingo card, I love it. Like,
it's remarkable.
It's fantastic.
It's crazy.
And obviously, when Irving is leaving, it's clearer to us that Bert is hiding something. Yeah. Like, he definitely was working at Lumen in some capacity 20 years ago, and he's a problematic person. But I guess there's a lot more to be seen.
Absolutely.
So I suppose before we get into theories and predictions in the 5th appendix, we should probably address what happened when Mark returns home and interrupts Regabi having her yogurt. What was it about Helena, do you guys think, that made Mark suddenly realize he needed to continue the reintegration process? I think he feels immediately that he knows her from somewhere, right? So what was it about their conversation? He's definitely seen her on TV, maybe.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like there was something more.
to answer this without, just remind me that there's a theory that I kind of just threw away in season 1 or just forgot about that this scene reminded me of. But the only note I have in this is, what did he see? And obviously, when he starts getting his memories, the first place we're thrown into is him having sex with Helly. It's like, what the fuck? And then everything happens and it's chaos.
Kind of glitches, sees Gemma, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I too am wondering what he saw there, and I think to talk about that would be to talk Theory Central. But we still have more to talk about with Mark and Regabi in these final scenes. I think.
What do you guys think of the hole in his head?
Bit too much for me, can't lie.
Wow, they really showed her doing makeshift surgery.
Bit too much.
If anyone is squirmish, look away now.
The cinematography, you could actually feel his discomfort. You can see him. I was like, yo, she's drilling into your head. Where's the anesthesia? What's going on?
I'm telling you,
the hole was already there. She was cutting around the hole.
Did you ever find out the name of the shady doctors?
No, I didn't. I need to rewatch the episode of Slow Horses. I mean, you guys watch Slow Horses. You know when
we do. Yes.
I'm not up to date just yet.
Oh, okay, never mind. Then spoiler central. Never mind.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Actually, no, but now. Ebube, you know when the guy that's chasing the slaughterhouse guys, when he breaks his leg and then someone patches him up. You know, they searched and they said, oh, these type of people are in a directory. There's a name that they called them. Whatever name they call them is whatever. That's what Regabi is anyway. So.
I mean, Regabi was working for Lumen and then discovered reintegration and is on the run. So it makes sense that she's... Right now, if anyone's watching Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the way Octavius is doing basement experiments, that's kind of where Regabi is right now. She might be a genius, but she's currently a mad scientist. That's
but imagine suturing his head back with masking tape. I'm
no.
Was that masking?
I'm sure she stitched it. I'll give her that credit.
Probably. Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't Regabi. I used to be on the side of Regabi knows what she's doing. No, I'm not sure.
She can't be literally papering over the cracks. Come on.
Oh, that would be Theory Central too. Okay. Well,
oh my goodness, because I couldn't help but wonder if flooding the chip is a bad idea. One might even call it a reckless risk, right? Obviously, he's sweating profusely. It's very unnerving to watch him like that because it's almost like you can feel the heat that's on his body from what's going on, right? Yeah. He hasn't been updating Devin. She's suddenly knocking on the door. She jokingly, maybe not so jokingly, says she had a crush on the lady from baby camp and is, of course, talking about Gabby Arteta, the wife of Angelo Arteta, that senator who is in support of fully legalizing and recognizing the severance procedure. Yet another throuple, if you ask me. This episode is doing a lot of work. Outside. But the glitching is heavy. He loses when he tries to grab the cup and he can't. I literally screamed out, he's lost motor function. I screamed it 3 times before she just fell on the floor. And then Regabi appears just don't touch him. And she's just who are you? Where have you come from?
Honestly.
No, there's too much going. What do you guys think Devin is feeling? And how is that going to play into, the remaining 4 episodes? Because this is huge. Mark is definitely in danger, physical danger. They might need to take him to an actual hospital, which could result in real problems.
Yeah, that would, yeah. I think that was my worry. So I was worried that Devin would rush into the hospital because, that would obviously
she would definitely want to.
Yeah.
Regabi won't let her.
Yeah, definitely not. We're not sure
we're probably going to...
I think we're not sure what Devin feels right now. Well, I can tell you what she'll feel in the next episode. We know her
irritation,
her hatred.
Anger.
We know her hatred for Lumen. We know her non-tolerance of anything Lumen related. So to find that lady in his basement just crawl out like an insect, when her brother passes out, she would be very, very pissed off.
Yeah, the direction is crazy.
Passes out is even very light.
Well done to everyone involved, man. Because the way that feels, that feeling of, what are you doing here? That's real. Because everybody can relate with that. Can you imagine a loved one suddenly falling and then a random person you've never seen before just
comes out of a hole?
Don't touch.
Literally a hole.
Comes out of a hole.
Right? And you can see as well, because Mark, and this is where I'm talking about the whole neuroscience bit as well, because actually we can take this back to Miss Huang as well. And this is a question I want to ask you guys, but let's start here with the symptoms that he's experiencing, and it's Mark. Miss Hong asked Mark S if he's having any auras or hallucinations, and he is having hallucinations, but the aura is something that only happens that at so far has only happened to Mark Scout to the outside. When he's asking what is that smell, he's having an olfactory aura at this point, right before he actually has a full blown, I'm guessing, a seizure. I wasn't sure if it was a seizure or a stroke. I'm just going on the limb with the idea, going on the limb, yes, but I'm going on the limb with the idea that because strokes tend to have more of a risk of actual permanent damage, the show won't take that route. They did say hemorrhage, so bleeding in the brain, I mean, could be, it could be a stroke.
Yeah.
But
there's a fresh
looked
cut
at
on
the
his head,
symptoms.
so.
Yeah, I was looking at the symptoms he was experiencing, and it seems more like an epileptic seizure. Like the whole surge, like they just flooded the chip, so there will be a surge of electrical activity in his brain. He has some hallucinations, the visions we just saw. He has an aura, and then he starts to convulse when he falls. He also has the numbness or the loss of motor function, like he's struggling. So I'm guessing seizure. But again, it doesn't matter as much. But imagine, like you said, you imagine having a loved one experience that as someone just jumps out. But then if you go back to Mark S as well, all of this reintegration stuff is happening to Mark Scout on the outside. But what do the innies know about reintegration? Because Mark S, all he knows is he opened the fridge and all of a sudden he's getting obviously he knows that he has an outie life, but he's suddenly getting glimpses. So what is he thinking in this moment? What is he wondering what his outie is doing? Is he wondering if he's sick? Like I would want to know more about that aspect of Mark S's experience as the reintegration is happening as well, because he too is going to have to start. He too is having some glitching and bleeding. So how is he going to like respond to that? Because his first thing was he didn't tell him this one. Yeah, actually, I have been viewing some weird images. He's just like, and he's confused, and he keeps it to himself, which is what a person going through something like that would naturally do the first time. So just
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, with that in mind, I suppose we might as well go on and open up the fifth appendix.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any extra theories and predictions for what we can look forward to as the season progresses? Because with this whole reintegration thing, as Jerry just pointed out, there's a lot that's going to be happening from Mark physically that will start to affect his mental state. And I'm wondering how they will use all this imagery for story purposes. Things like him seeing Gemma, things like him remembering things that Gemma has said to his innie, stuff like that. Any takers?
Okay, also the first one is I don't trust Bert. I think that Bert is a lot closer to the history of Lumen and Severance than we have been led to believe this whole time, which breaks my heart because I really like Irving and Bert. So the idea that Bert could, like, I think Bert and Drummond were working together when Drummond, I could be wrong, but I think they were working together when Drummond.
But I have something on that actually. If what you're saying is true, how do we know he was actually severed?
Who, Bert?
Like, how do we know he wasn't just? Yeah, how do we know he wasn't just pulling?
He had a Glasgow block as well.
Yeah, how? Though he's not severed at all. Like, what if he was just like pretending to be who he was down there?
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
To what purpose? Yeah, exactly. So there is that. Let me see if I remember it, because there was something else I mentioned during the episode that you guys had to remind me. I'm trying to think. But one that I've just been keeping as well is, actually, and I remember it. So in episode 1 of season 1, we're told they stagger their entries because they don't want them to meet on the outside. I haven't paid much attention to this since because we've had no reason to think about it. But in season 1, I realized that when Mark obviously knew PT was gone, but he seemed to just continue with his stuff. But then he met PT on the outside, and then straight after that, he starts to experience. He seems to have more of a stronger emotional reaction to PT on the inside. So much so that Cobell sends him to wellness, which we've all alluded is potentially some sort of like sanity check or testing to be sure that the severance chip is still working.
Conditioning.
There are theories on that, right? Mark crosses paths with Helly in episode 1 when he actually almost hits her, and then they have this emotional journey together in season 1 and 2. So I'm wondering as well, like, what is the story behind like, is it when they just say it's better that way? Is there something to the idea that the more they meet on the outside, the stronger the connection might be? And then that brings us back to the diner, because they're staring at each other and Mark sees something or feels something. Is it like this much exposure to each other outside and inside is causing some sort of flooding back, especially because he's already going through reintegration, so he's even more susceptible to something like that.
Definitely, he knows her from somewhere. He can feel it.
Yeah.
So I'm that was a theory I threw away, but I'm just bringing that back in because like it seems like they're going in that direction now. And the last one I want to throw in is the title sequences. I've just always taken them to be things that have happened or will happen and are in Mark's subconscious. Because every episode we see something that like plays out, and we're just essentially exploring Mark's subconscious in both the season 1 and the season 2 one. Like a dream sequence of sorts.
Fascinating.
I mean,
well,
with I like the idea of the people meeting on, because I did say this I think in our earlier recordings that Gemma and actually I think it was the recap of season 1 where I was talking about Gemma and Mark, and you know that connection that they have, just beating Severance, like you know the love or just the natural draw you have to someone is greater than science, or greater than a chip, or it is science, to be fair, I guess, you know, hormones and all of that stuff. But yeah.
Do you guys think Mark is actually going to end up meeting James Egan?
That's a very, very good question. I would throw away logic here, and say yes. Don't ask me why. I'm just gonna go with.
I don't have a dog in this
At this point, anything is possible.
Yeah, exactly. But why introduce it? Like, why nothing so far? Oh yeah, I just remembered one big theory. This one is almost ridiculous, but the fact is, we know that Irving is working with somebody.
Yes.
Some people assume that, you know, because Ragabi has said she's done this before, and we only know of PT and Mark, it might be Irving. But
yeah, but it could be someone else.
What if Irving is working with the Whole Mind Collective?
The Whole Mind Collective, yeah, it's possible. But like, then it would have to be somebody inside there who is competent enough to.
Yeah, but what if they're more lead? But what if
than the people who are throwing paint?
Irving on the inside is very culty as well. Whole Mind Collective sounds like a cult. They might just be doing this whole idea of, like we're on serious people on the outside, but the people on the inside actually know that they've gone. It's like in, what's the name of the show? Upload. There's these people, I can't remember what they're called, the resistance. Like no one takes them seriously, but they go very far. And I'm just wondering, what if Irving is working with the Whole Mind Collective? I'm not saying he is, but what if?
That would be an interesting revelation, to be fair. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Our coverage could definitely evolve going forward. We'll have to see how the episodes play out and, you know, when we're able to also see them. But in any case, I think that's probably a good place to call it. So thanks so much, guys, for joining me. I feel just as confused. I appreciate you guys.
Obviously.
And to everybody who's listened up until this point, thank you so much for being here. Definitely go listen to everything else that we're doing on this podcast. Again, we're covering Invincible. We are covering Yellow Jackets. We're also covering The White Lotus. And there's a lot more to come down the line that I can't quite talk about yet. So keep it locked to the Popcorn for Dinner feed. And until then, what's for dinner?